Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will dive deep into the SDTM QS domain, that is the questionnaire and scales. We will learn what the QS domain is, why it is collected, and how it captures the subject reported outcomes. We will also explore how the QS data is structured, how the ORRES and the STRESC are populated, and most importantly, the key difference between the QS and FT domains, which often confuses many programmers. So let's get started. The QS domain is used to capture data that comes directly from the subject, usually through the standard questionnaire forms. The purpose of this domain is to assess how the subject feels or functions in a clinical trial. It helps us measure aspects like the quality of life, mood, or the pain level from the subject's own perspective. In SDTM QS, it belongs to the finding class and stores each individual question and its response. The structure of this domain is one record per questionnaire, per question, per time point, per visit, per subject. And the topic variable for this domain is the QS test CD. Let's understand how the QS data is collected. For this purpose, we are taking the example of the EQ5D5L questionnaire form. Right now, what I'm showing you here is the standard questionnaire form provided by the CDISC. In this form, you can see that we have 5 different questions being asked for this particular form, which is the 5Q5D5L. These questions are related to the mobility, self-care, usual activities, pain or discomfort, and the anxiety, depression. All of these are the questions. So if you can see that these are the questions which are being mapped to the QS test CD, and we are providing a coded value here. From where this value comes, we will talk about it in a few minutes time. But as of now, you can see that for each questionnaire, we have a test CD being defined, which is the coded word, coded term here. And similarly, you will see that we will have a description provided also for the QS test based on these questions also. What these QS test CD and QS test are having are the values which are provided by the CDISC, and the values are provided as per the standard terminologies, also the control terminologies in this case. Apart from this, you can see that for each questions we have 5 points where the subject has to answer his response. As you can see that in mobility, we have 5 questions, whether the subject had no problem walking, slight problem walking, moderate problem, severe problem, or is unable to walk. So based on the questions, we can see we have different uh, different values in which the subject have to qualify his activity for this. So now if based on what the value the subject is selected, that value will be called as the collected values from the subject's perspective. So that value will be populated in your QSORRES. That is the originally captured result, and the whatever value the subject clicks here, the checkbox which is selected here for the respective question will be the text value which will go in your QSORRES. Apart from this, we also have a variable which is the QSEVINTX, that is for is annotated in this form as value equal to today. So what is happening is right now in this questionnaire form, the subject has to answer these questions based on how he is feeling on these parameters on that particular day, that is today. So based on that, you have the value for the evaluation interval text, which is nothing but the QSEVINTX hard coded in your CRF as today. Now let's see the other question which we have in your 5Q5D5L form. The first 5 questions of the 5Q5D5L form captures the text values of the question's response, but there is another question which captures the score entered by the subject. So in this question, what is happening is we are asking the subject to rate his health, how good or bad his health is on that particular day, and in this case it is today, that low being the minimum, 0 being the lowest or minimum and high 100 being the highest, that is the worst and best health you can imagine. Based on that, the subject has to score from this scale, and that particular value, whatever value he will select, he will point out in this scale also, and the value which is pointing out in this scale will also be entered in this box, which is your health today. And this is the sixth question for this particular form. And again, this value which the subject is entering in this box will be the collected value. But however, what is marking in this scale will go in your stress C variables for this particular question. Apart from this, we also have some values being defined which are going to be populated in your subqual variables for this particular form in QS. And we are having two subquals. One is for the worst health you can imagine, and one is the best health you can imagine. So what we'll have is that for this particular value, say the worst health you can imagine, you will have a subqual created which will have the text value. Since this is the text, this text will be the qval for that. That will go in one particular subqual again, and the value the subject has selected as the worst health the subject can imagine will go in your another subqual variable, which is the QSANVLLO. And similarly, the case is for the high value as well. We will be checking on these subqual values in more details in few minutes. In previous example, what we have seen is how the data is collected on the CRF form or the questionnaire form, but how it will be populated in your SDTM QS data, let's see that right now. So again, in this case, again, since this is a standard questionnaire form, the CDISC has already defined how the QSORRES and the QSSTRESC and STRESN will be populated for each test values which we have in this particular form. So here you can see that when the question is for the first test, that is the mobility, the test CD was the EQ5D0201, and the test value will be populated as by EQ5D02 mobility. So here you can see it is giving the details about that. This is the coded value which we are using for the test code. This is that questionnaire for EQ5D, and for this, this is question related to mobility. So you can correlate the QS test and the test CD value as well. So for this particular test, taking an example, if based on what this value the subject is selecting in the questionnaire form, the text value will always be populated in your QSORRES in this case. And they have defined in your standard form that the first value is populated as is coded in other words as 1, and then similarly for the remaining values you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the coded values for the collected result. So if the subject answers for the first question as I have moderate problem walking, in that case there will be one record created for this particular test where the QSORRES will be populated as I have moderate problem walking, whereas the QSSTRESC and QSSTRESN will have the value of 3 populated. Same is the case for the rest of the 6 questions here, that based on what response the subject is selecting, we will have a QSORRES populated as the text value, whereas the stress C and stress N, which is the standard result value, will be populated in the coded numeric value from this form as provided by the CDISC. Now let's see how the subqual will be populated in this particular QS form in the SDTM data. As we have discussed that the worst health you can imagine and the best health you can imagine will be populated as subqual, you can see that as per the CDISC standard, what it is, they have defined two different types of subquals. One will capture the anchor text value, and whereas the another will capture as the anchor value. That is, text value will be the value that whether this value is the worst value or it is the best value. So we will have the QSANTXLO, which is the anchor text low value, and similarly HI is the anchor text high value, as the two subqual created for each subject, where the QVal will be the worst health you can imagine and the best health you can imagine respectively. However, when the subject is selecting these values, you will see that the value for the low, the anchor value low, is marked as 0, and the max best health you can imagine is in this scale is 100. So based on that, the QVal will always have the value of 0 and 100 for low and high subcall values here. So this is something which is defined in your CDISC standard form for the 5Q5D5L questionnaire. So we will be creating all these 4 subcalls for each subject in your SDTM dataset. Now let's see how the data captured in your SDTM QS dataset will look like for this particular form. So here right now I'm showing you the QS dataset, where we have the data for one subject and 2 visits. That is the visit 1 and visit 2, we are having the information. So you can observe that for this questionnaire, since we had 6 questions, all of these 6 questions are being asked, and we had a one record for each questions for each visit. Even when it was not done, we had a record created for each test here, each individual test here, and the status was populated not done for each questions. So you can see that you have the question, the test CD, the QS test being populated. Since this is the EQ5D5L, so the category for this particular questionnaire form will be EQ5D5L. Again, the QSCat variable is one variable where we have the category of questionnaire code list being applied. So you can also find the value of what uh, value can be populated for the QSCat for this particular questionnaire in the control terminology sheet. So based on that, we have the value populated for QSCat here, and based on the result the subject is selecting, you can see the QSORRES is having the text value populated, whereas the STRESC and STRESN variables are having the numeric value for that particular result is populated here. We have the visit name, date, and since this form was captured for the today health, we have the evaluation interval text populated as today, which was also annotated in your CRF form. The sixth question is the score. So what value the subject has entered as the total score for that particular value is being populated in your QSORRES, as well as the standard result variables, which is the STRESC and STRESN. And since this was this score, how this score was captured, this score was captured in one scale. You mentioned, you remember there was a scale which was going from 0 to 100, and in that scale the subject had to select the value. So that scale is the visual analog scale, which had the range of 0 to 100. There the scale can differ from the range of the scale can differ based on the uh, questionnaires. So in this case, the visual and analog scale which we had used was from 0 to 100. So that's why this value is coming. But if there is a questionnaire form where the visual analog scale is ranging from 0 to 10, then that in brackets you will have the 0 to 10 range mentioned. So in this way you can capture all the uh, results for all the tests, and it will be populated for all the visits, and we will create one record per question, per questionnaire, per visit for each subject. Coming to the subcall part, you can see here again that for this subject we had all those 4 questionnaires created, and we had the range values, which is 0 to 100 as the anchor value low, as well as you can see the anchor text low and high being populated as we have discussed earlier. So in this way it will be populated for each subject of the study in your questionnaire form. Now let's see how we can find the standard CDISC defined questionnaire forms. For that purpose, you will have to navigate to the QRS portal of defined by the CDISC. For that, you will first have to log into the CDISC site, which is the cdisc.org site, and from there, if you want to go directly, you can directly go from this link which I am providing here. That is the after login, you can go to the standards and fundamentals and the QRS form. So by going to this link, you will go to this page directly, or the other way to go to this form is this page is that once you logged into the CDISC.org site, you will click on the standards option here, and there will be a drop down from where you can select the fundamentals, and in fundamentals you will go to the QRS page here. Once you are in QRS page, you will have to go to the QRS supplements tab. After this page will open, and in this page you can see that it will list down all the questionnaire forms which are provided by the CDISC. In this questionnaire forms, you have the information of the questionnaire, that is the QRS name, and along with that you will also have the category, which is the QSCAT value, also being populated here. And along with this, you will also have the information that this particular questionnaire form is for either ADAM dataset or the SDTM dataset. And in SDTM dataset, whether it is for FT domain, QS domain, RS domain, which domain it is, you will have the information in this list here. If you know the questionnaire forms which you want to see, you can either populate the QRS name here or what it contains, or even the category values here, and from there also you can directly filter out by selecting the apply here, and it will directly list the questionnaire form which you want to search. So right now here you can see that few of the items are in blue, and there is one item which is in black. So what does that mean? The items which are in blue, that are the hyperlink values of the questionnaire forms, and these are the forms which are valid and active. The QRS name, which is in black here, for example, in this case, this value, it is black because due to some reason, this questionnaire form is being inactive from now on, and it is no longer being used. The reason for this can be seen from the permission column here, that what was the reason this form was inactive, called as inactive from now on. So for all the active questionnaire forms, you can just click on the hyperlink and you will be directed to another page which will have the hyperlinks, or the hyperlinks for the PDF files, which you can either open or download as per your requirement, and you can have all the information of the questionnaire form, that is what questions are being asked in that questionnaire form, how it will be annotated in your SDTM CRF form, and how it will be populated in your SDTM dataset as well. So you can go to this particular form or this particular portal to know all about you want to know about any questionnaire forms. Now let's see something about the control terminology which we have for the CDISC. As we know that for QS domain, we will need the SDTM terminology for the QS test, QS test code, and as well as the QS category. But the question is sometimes that which terminology we have to use and from where we can have that particular file. So right now I'm showing you the CDISC CT portal, that is the CDISC Controlled Terminology portal here. So the link to this portal is provided in red here, and by navigating to this link, you will be you will go to this page where you can see all the SDTM terminologies, all the C- terminologies files here. Most of you might know that this particular terminology is being updated every 3 months in a year. So you can see that from the last modified dates, you can access the latest SDTM terminology sheet, which is present or provided by the CDISC, and or if there is any other version which you are currently using in your study. So from there also you can select the version which you are using here and uh, use that particular terminology. So right now you might also note that this terminology sheet is provided in different formats. There is PDF format as well, the text format, XLS format, and the HTML format as well. So you can select any of these formats. Just these are hyperlinks, and by clicking on these hyperlinks, the respective file will be automatically downloaded in your system, and from there you can access the SDTM terminology sheet which we will be using in your QS domain. Now let's have a look and feel of the control terminology which we have just discussed, how we are going to download. So right now I'm showing you the Excel format of that particular terminology. So right now this is the SDTM terminology, the latest terminology available and downloaded from the CDISC site. So in this terminology sheet, what I have done is, since we were discussing the EQ5L5D questionnaire form in this video, so what I have done is, in this form, I have filtered out in that particular questionnaire form information only. So in the code list name, I can filter out this particular code list. And if you can also see this 5Q5L 5D questionnaire is also called as the European Quality of Life 5 dimension 5 levels scale questionnaire. So for this questionnaire, in this code list, we have two type of code list. One code list is for the test code, that is the test CD, and the other is the test name, that is for the QS test. So you can see that in this questionnaire, for this particular questionnaire, we have all the six values which for each questions. You can see these are the questions, and this is the code list name also, the code list name code, and this is the description of that code list. So you have all these six test codes being defined, their synonyms being mentioned, and similarly for these coded values of the test, you will have the description, which is the QS test values as well, provided in the test name code list. So from in here you can see, from the control terminology, what are the standard QS test series being provided by the CDISC for the standard questionnaire. So apart from this, you can also see there is another code list which is the category of for questionnaires. If you will see and search for the category of for questionnaire in this code list name, that that code list is for the QSCAT variable, and it will list down a long list here for all the categories, well, standard category values of the categories provided by the CDISC. So in this way, you can navigate to the control terminology sheet and use as per your requirement. Now, as we have seen in the QRS portal, we can see that many of the questionnaire forms were mapped as that these are the questionnaire forms which will go to the FT domain, and many were mapped to the QS domain. So any person who is new to this field will find it difficult to evaluate from its own that how he will judge that which questionnaire form should be mapped to the QS domain and which it should be mapped to the FT domain. This FT domain is a domain which is recently being added in the latest or the past few latest versions of the SDTM IG. If you are working on SDTM IG version, say 3.1.2, you will not see the FT domain. In that version, we only had the QS domain. So how will we will know, or we will judge that which questionnaire form should be mapped to the FT domain or which should be mapped to the QS domain? So to understand this, think of the QS domain as the domain which is collecting information about what a person feels or thinks. It comes from form or questionnaire where the subject gives answers. For example, the question is, how do you rate your pain today? Do you feel anxious or depressed? How is your overall health? So questionnaire is, or the QS is about the subject's opinion, feeling, or self-assessment, what they say about their health. However, if we talk about the FT domain, which is the functional test domain, this domain collects information about what a person can do or perform. It is based on the test done by the investigators. For example, the subject will be asked to walk, and it will be seen that how far can the subject walk in 6 minutes. It is the quantitative test that how far the subject has walked in 6 minutes. Or we can also have the test like how strong is their hand grip, how quickly can they get up from a chair and walk a short distance. So what FT is collecting is it is collecting about the actual performance or ability measured through a test or observations. So if you see and compare the QS and FT domain, you can say that QS is the domain where the question is being asked and it is about the opinion of the subjects. Taking an example here, that if we are testing for the fatigue or tiredness, the subject will be asked to rate its fatigue or tiredness on a scale of 1 to 10. How tired does the subject feel? So based on the opinion of the subject, there can be an answer which can range from a scale from 1 to 10. However, to actually understand or do the factual test of it, the investigator might ask the subject to take a take a walk or have to exercise on a treadmill, and we'll see how long the subject has walked and how much time it took the subject to walk that particular distance. So that is the actual test being done, and it is giving the actual value. It is not based on the opinion of the subject. So in this way you can differentiate between the questionnaire and the FT domain. Now let's talk about an important practical aspect. What to do when your QS dataset becomes too large for submission. In many studies, the QS domain can grow very big because each subjects have multiple questionnaires like EQ5D, SF36, HADS, and each of these questionnaires contains many questions collected across multiple visits. As a result, the dataset can easily cross the FDA maximum allowed limit of 5 GB. According to the FDA Technical Conformance Guide, any dataset which is larger than the 5G in the uncompressed form must be split into smaller files before submission. So how do we split the QS domain? The most logical and preferred way is to split by the questionnaire type, which is captured in the variable QSCat. For example, the value for when the QS category value is the EQ5D, then we can create a data set by filtering out the records that we're applying the filter on this particular value on QSCat and name that dataset as QS underscore EQ5D. Similarly, for all the rest of the category questionnaires which we have in our data, we can create a separate questionnaire file which will be named as QS underscore, and after that we can have the category value added to the dataset. Each of these files will have the same structure and variables as the main QS domain, only the data changes. If one questionnaire will still exceeds the 5 GB, you can further split it by study phase or visit range. For example, we can create if the let's say the SF36 questionnaire form is still uh, more than 5 GB capacity, then we can create further data set from this questionnaire data based on the period, say period P1 and P2. So in this case, the further split of this data set can be called as the QS underscore SF36 underscore P1 for visits which are following in the period 1 and same and respectively for period 2 or and so on. Or we can be, also split based on the visits, like we can create the data set for first 5 visits, then we have another data set created for next 5 visits and so on. So in this way, if you can split the data set in your QS domain. There is a third way which is less commonly used, and that is the case if there is no natural split which we can use to split the data set. In this Third way, what you can do is you can divide it by the subject ranges. For example, that we create one data set where the subject, we are keeping the data of first 500 subjects in, and then in the next split data set, we are creating the data set for the next 500 subjects. So in this way, also you can split the data set, but again, point to note here is this is the less preferable way to split the data set. It is also important to remember that whenever a domain is split, each part must be listed separately in the define.xml, and you should explain the split logic clearly in the SDRG file. That's all for today. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on SDTM domains, ADAM, and clinical SAS programming. Comment below if you want us to cover a specific domain or topic next. Thanks for watching.